Hey, Sunset Youth. It's Wednesday, March 25th. I hope everyone enjoyed our virtual teen time this past Sunday evening. Planning on us having another one this coming Sunday night around the same time, 6:30. The code to get in will be the code you used this past Sunday. If you've been out or haven't seen it, what have you, I'll resend out the code on Saturday afternoon up on the Facebook page and through the Remind app. The meeting time is only 40 minutes. If we get disconnected like we did this past Sunday, I'll open up a new meeting and then just use the same code to reconnect. We're also going to try and do a Netflix party on Friday night, and I'll send out more instructions on that tomorrow as to what we're going to watch and how to do it and all that stuff. But since we've been cooped up lately, I've gotten a lot of time to spend with Alex and Autumn. We've watched a lot of Disney movies. And of course, the newest one to hit Disney Plus has been Frozen 2. And that's become Autumn's new favorite. I've lost count of how many times we've watched it. But there's a scene in that that stuck out to me. Minor spoiler alert if you haven't seen Frozen 2. So, Elsa, she decides to go and find the place. I can't pronounce it. Atolian, I think that's how it's said. But she decides to go find this place alone. And Anna and Olaf, they find themselves in this dark cave, and all goes from bad to worse. And Anna begins to sing a song called The Next Right Thing. So I'm going to read the lyrics to you. I've seen dark before, but not like this. This is cold. This is empty. This is numb. The life I knew is over, the lights are out. Hello, darkness, I'm ready to succumb. I follow you around, I always have. But you've gone to a place I cannot find. This grief has a gravity, it pulls me down, but a tiny voice whispers in my mind, you are lost. Hope is gone. But you must go on, and do the next right thing. Sound familiar to anybody? You know, past few weeks, our world has changed drastically. We went from laughing about the coronavirus to it coming to the U.S. And we've kind of had our world turned upside down with schools, businesses, entertainment being shut down. And now we have states having people sheltering in place as the number of cases is topping 53,000. These are difficult times. But this is not the first time we've seen something like this where the world gets flipped upside down. In the book of Daniel, their world gets flipped upside down. In Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, it says this. During the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord gave him victory over King Jehoiakim of Judah, and permitted him to take some of the sacred objects from the temple of God. So Nebuchadnezzar took them back to the land of Babylonia, and placed them in the treasure house of his God. Now, it was predicted by the prophet Jeremiah that Jerusalem would fall to the Babylonians years before it actually happened. The siege began in the year 605 BC. Jerusalem fell, and the Babylonians plundered everything. They even took stuff from the temple and brought it back to Babylon. Can you imagine for a second what that must have been like? City under siege, temple looted, the government of Judah falls. Then later on in verse 3 it says, the king ordered Ashpenaz, his chief of staff, to bring to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and other noble families who had been brought to Babylon as captives. Select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. Make sure they're all well-versed in every branch of learning, are gifted with knowledge and good judgment, and are suited to serve in the royal palace. Train these young men in the language and literature of Babylon. So Babylon doesn't just take things, it also takes people. It looks to the sons of the nobles and royal family, the best of the best, and takes them back. These guys are teenagers, and they're losing the world that they know. Even though they were raised Jews, they'll be educated in the ways of the Babylonians. The world they knew was gone. It had changed. They had a choice. They could fight or adapt to the new one. So they chose to adapt while still choosing to honor God in their new circumstances. We might know the rest of the first chapter. They were given just veggies to eat. God honored that, making them healthier than the other ones who didn't. But they didn't know if he would do that. They didn't want to defile themselves. I wonder what they were thinking. Were they scared? Were they anxious? Were they mad? Was it all of the above? The world they knew was gone, and they had to adapt to living into the new one, which included feeling and working through these emotions. These were stressful times. They had emotions. Even in stressful times, Jesus had emotions, and he knew everything. What's the shortest verse in the Bible? Can you tell me? It's John 11:35. It says, "Then Jesus wept." Jesus, he was a good friend of Lazarus and Mary and Martha. He'd come to their house for meals often. And when word came that Lazarus was sick, Jesus waited a few days until going to see him. In doing so, Lazarus died before Jesus got there. When he showed up, the funeral was taking place. There was all sorts of sadness going on. One of Lazarus' sisters asked why he hadn't come quicker. He could have saved him. At the question, Jesus welled up and cried. His friend has died. He was gone from earth at that moment, and yet Jesus knew what was going to come next. He was God, and he knew that he was going to raise Lazarus back to life. But before that, he still felt and processed through the sadness of losing a friend. In Luke 22:44, it says this about Jesus: he prayed more fervently, and he was in such agony of spirit that his sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. In the final hours of his freedom and before his death, Jesus spent time in the Garden of Gethsemane praying, and it was one of the most intense prayer times. In fact, he's feeling all these emotions of what's coming, so much in fact that he's sweating blood. Again, he's so emotional about what's coming, the fear, the anxiety, and he's responding with emotions. One of the great displays of his humanity here. And then later on in Romans 12:15, it says, "Be happy with those who are happy, and weep with those who weep." So if Jesus had these emotions during tough times, it's okay for us to have emotions from all the way the world is changing around us day by day. We're living through history-making times. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be frightened, frustrated, have anxiety. What to do with these emotions, though, is a critical thought. Paul tells us this verse in Romans. He tells us to rejoice with those who are rejoicing and weep with those who are weeping. There are several things going on here in this verse. First, he's expressing the gamut of emotions: happiness, joy, gladness, sadness, weeping, and the pain that goes with these. We will have these emotions as well. But notice the second part. He tells us to do it together. Be happy together. Be sad together. We're wired for connection, and having someone to work through emotions together with is huge. I imagine Daniel and his 3 friends did this often in their newfound location and situation in Babylon. That's hard right now. I get it. We're supposed to be socially isolating, but there are still ways we can do this. Call a friend. Text someone. Even FaceTime. We may be isolated, but at the same time, we can still be in connection with each other virtually. And if you're doing okay, then reach out to your friends and family and see how they're doing. Check in on them. In Matthew 5:14 through 16, probably you know this one. It says this: "You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father." If you remember the account of Daniel, they didn't just settle in and culturally adapt to what Babylon was telling them. Their situation had changed, but not who they were. They were people who followed God, and they could do that in Babylon as well in Jerusalem or Judea. They stood out when they chose to follow God in that foreign land. Our situation has changed as well. We're supposed to be distancing ourselves. You could be homeschoolers for the rest of the year, who knows? But Jesus offers us guidance on what to do here as well. He tells us that we are to be lights. We are to stand out. Have you ever been in a cave with the lights out? It's pitch black. You can't see. You can't see. You could put your hand up in front of your face and you wouldn't be able to tell it was there. But if you were to turn on a light, it would stand out brightly. Jesus mentioned at the end of the Beatitudes, he tells us that we should be a light to the world, a lampstand that lets its light shine bright. Here he uses shining to mean good works. In other places, he says people will know his followers by their love. We have an opportunity to be that light right when the world is literally changing day by day. Even if we don't know what's coming next, we can be people who are joy-filled and hopeful. We can show love to those in our circles. We may not have this all figured out, but there are ways. It's easy to text. It's easy to FaceTime each other. We can even share toilet paper if we have some to spare. As Anna says, come what may, do the next right thing.